I'm sure you all have heard about Little Red Riding Hood. We all know the kid story, right? The good little girl who ends up wandering into the forest all by herself, only to be met by a friendly wolf, who then eats her and her grandmother too. When we're kids, we're bombarded with all kinds of stories that teach us many different things. And there's often a common theme, a common central message. Be kind to others, heroes come in all shapes and sizes, it's best to be honest, you know the score. Most of them, although maybe not all of them, are good moral lessons. But one of the most popular, yet most misunderstood, is the moral of Little Red Riding Hood, which is, don't talk to strangers. The sad thing is, in many parts of the world, we are raised to believe that strangers are dangerous, that we shouldn't trust them, and that they can cause harm to us. Kids have had that message drummed into them since day one. And it is good advice if you're a kid, right? Sure. But not if that stops you from talking to every stranger you meet. Because if it does, you're missing out big time. Some of our greatest lessons in life are learned by listening to stories, by learning from them, and by learning from those who tell them. So today, I'd like to share my story. In fact, I will be sharing 4 short stories that illustrate why we need to hang the brainwashing out to dry, why we should talk to strangers, and how doing so can lead to some amazing and sometimes unexpected benefits. In this modern, crazy digital world where so many people just seem to be out for themselves, isn't it more important than ever that we reach out to other people? And no, Siri and Alexa don't count. They say that about a third of teenagers with smartphones are to send more than 100 messages a day. And many of them, almost all of them, are more likely to text their friends than they are to talk to them face to face. Kids spend hours every day on their screens engaging with ideas and others, but they are not communicating or improving their interpersonal skills. And yet, is there a more important skill than the ability to connect with real people in the real world face to face? Probably not. So then, the question arises, who is it safe to talk to and who is it not? And it's an important one for young people in particular, especially because of the fact that people like me are often in contact with more people in a single week than our ancestors were in their entire lifetime. And we all know there are some pretty undesirable people out there, especially ones on the internet, right? I see some of you in agreement because you all know the dangers. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what are the benefits? So today, I'm going to be telling you guys about how the chocolate boxes, fishing chips, poisonous snakes, and cockpits helped me to understand why talking to what I call sensibly selected strangers is a good thing, and why you and all kids out there should do it too. So, let's start off with the amazing tale of Vivian and the chocolate box. It was summer of 2018 when I was on a long-haul flight from Vancouver to Hong Kong. A few hours in, I had an insane craving for chocolate. But that's okay, I'm a kid. So, I got up my seat and walked to the back of the plane where the cabin crew hid all their munchies. As I was happily chomping away on a chocolate bar, I decided to start a conversation with Vivian, who I thought to be a sensibly selected stranger, given the fact that I was on a plane and she was a flight attendant. We started off by talking about my chocolate addiction, then quickly moved on to her job. I was curious to know more, as my dad works in the airline industry, and I actually wanted to be a flight attendant when I was a little boy. But not anymore, which is good because she made it sound terrible. Up until that point, I thought the life of an international jet-setting flight attendant was glamorous. zooming off the exotic destinations, landing for a few days between flights so you could explore the amazing cities, enrich yourself with the culture, and sample their finest cuisine. But she explained that her and her colleagues were always so jet-lagged that they had no choice but to stay in their airport hotel, sleep throughout most of the day, then finally wake up only to order room service. By the time they had actually recovered and wanted to go sightseeing, the only sight they saw was the inside of an airplane for the next scheduled flight. That was the nail in the cabin crew coffin for me. As I took my seat, I saw Vivian expertly multitasking her way down the other aisle, balancing noodles, making coffees, and dealing with 101 other things. So I was surprised when a few moments later, she appeared from behind the curtains of business class, whispered to me with a wink the words, "Shh, don't tell," then handed me a box of luxury chocolates. So, what was the benefit of striking up a conversation with Vivian? Apart from the box of luxury business class chocolates. Well, it challenged my assumptions and taught me a new perspective. I'd assumed since I was a little boy that the life of a flight attendant was very glamorous. But then I heard it directly from the horse's mouth. Sorry, Vivian. It wasn't at all. I learned that judging by assumptions and appearances is short-sighted and unwise. And that's an important lesson for young people these days. Now on to story number 2. Surprisingly, I was on another flight, this time from Las Vegas to Vancouver, when I had to get out of my window seat into the aisle so I could use the washroom. You can see the pattern unfolding here now, right? As I stepped over my mom into the aisle, I realized that the flight attendants had pulled out their trolleys on both sides. I was stuck. But in the aisle opposite, there was an empty seat next to a nice-looking couple. So I asked if I could sit down for a moment just so I wouldn't have to trample over my mom again so soon. They smiled and I sat down. And of course, I started talking to them. Turns out, believe it or not, they only lived 15 minutes away from me. I was like, what? Seriously? Anyways, when the nice lady's husband realized where I was from, he pulled out a fishing magazine. He told me all the best and secret places to go for fishing, some expert tips on bait, and stuff like that. I was only supposed to sit there for a few moments until the flight attendants had whisked their trolleys away. But I ended up sitting there for 3 hours, the entire remainder of the flight. Sorry, Mom. I never did make it to the washroom, but I did learn something from these sensibly selected strangers. 2 things, actually. 1, it really is a small world. You never know who you're sitting next to unless you ask. And 2, the Blakemore Roadrunner is a particularly inexpensive bait and is a favorite for all around fishing. Well, I thought that was interesting. Now on to tale number 3. Just last summer, I was back in Vegas, and of course, we had to check out the Grand Canyon. We were staying at this super cool ranch right slap bang in the middle of the canyon. It had this gigantic patio off to one side, so one day, I decided to go explore it. As I approached the patio, a bright yellow sign caught my attention, and it said, "Beware of rattlesnakes." Yup, rattlesnakes. Not the perfect holiday guest. Luckily, I didn't see any. But what I did see was a lovely British couple who I thought to be sensibly selected strangers. They were standing around filming some sort of time-lapse video. So naturally, me being me, I decided to go talk to them. "Snakes. I hate them," I said, in which they nodded in agreement. Then they started telling me all about the snake in England called the adder, which has diamonds across its back, so you know that it's dangerous. I could tell they were Brits by their accents, so naturally, I decided to ask them about British-type things, like the famous British chef Gordon Ramsay. They were surprised I even knew him, and even more surprised when I said that I loved his shows and can do an uncannily accurate impression of the mad British cook. So I did. I did my impression of Gordon shouting in a suitably English accent while jumping up and down, "What are you, an idiot sandwich?" They laughed at me and had said that I got the mad bit about right, but not so much about the British bit. And so, what was the point of that little meeting? Well, it's always great talking to people from different cultures, and I had learned a few things about the UK that I wouldn't have known before. I also learned that a career in acting as well as in flight attending is not for me. And finally, story number 4. Last year, I was on a flight from Las Vegas to Vancouver. In fact, I was actually boarding a flight to Vancouver when I got the opportunity of a lifetime. Normally, I fly on larger aircraft, so I board from the middle of the plane. But this time, we boarded from the front. And there was my opportunity. Now, when I say I want to talk about the benefits of talking to strangers, that also includes requests. You'll be surprised how nice most people are as long as your request is a nice one. So I asked the lovely flight attendant whether I could have a quick look in the cockpit and take some pictures. Like boys in many parts of the world, I'd always wanted to do it, but never got the chance. She disappeared into the cabin and came back a few moments later, saying, "Sure, the captain would like to meet you." I couldn't believe my luck. I spent the next 10 minutes chatting with the captain all about the technology in the plane and how he thought about being a pilot. It was great. And all because I made a simple, honest request to a lovely, kind-hearted person who then asked another lovely, kind-hearted person who then agreed to help. So the lesson from this conversations with strangers is obvious. Most people are nice, most people are friendly, and most people are willing to help. And you usually can learn a thing or two as well. So there are some of my stories and thoughts about why talking to strangers is a great thing to do. But we do have to be careful, no matter who we are. Most people are kind, thoughtful, helpful, generous, and have your best interest at heart. But of course, there are those who aren't and don't. There's no way in knowing for sure who's who, which is why we need to use our common sense when deciding. Many parents always feel nervous about their kids talking to strangers. And that's fine. That's normal. That's what parents should feel. But parents also need to understand that by allowing their kids to step out of their comfort zone in a safe environment, take calculated and sensible risk, and talk to people they don't know, they can experience some amazing and unexpected benefits and learn some important life lessons. Everyone you encounter knows something that you don't. When you engage in conversation, keep your mind open and be prepared to learn and be amazed. And I hope that is what I have demonstrated today. When you talk to strangers, you are making meaningful interruptions into their daily lives and yours. You're making unexpected connections. If you don't talk to strangers, you're missing out on all of that. Talking to sensibly selected strangers has given me the confidence and courage to stand here in front of all you strangers today and share my stories. And I hope that in the future, you will all have stories of your own to share about how talking to strangers changed your life. Thank you.